This is a map of the largest migration in world history. But before we show it to you, let us tell you a story. A baby was born in 1947. His birthplace was a small village in Punjab. He grew up tending his family's fields with his brother. He had no idea he was living in one of the most volatile regions on Earth. But when he turned 16, everything changed. A political boundary divided him from his homeland. He could no longer visit the house where he grew up or tend the fields his father owned. He was separated from his home, forced to move and start a new life somewhere else. He wasn't alone. Around him were hundreds of thousands of other Indians who had all been forced from their homes. They packed whatever they could carry and left behind the only life they'd ever known. He didn't know where he was going or how long it would take to get there, but he knew he couldn't stay where he was. He had become a refugee. And if that story sounds sad, just imagine what it must have been like for millions of people to experience it at the same time. On August 14, 1947, Great Britain finally ended its colonial rule over India. But the British didn't simply leave the subcontinent as one country. They split it into two separate states, India and Pakistan. And it was one of the biggest mistakes any colonizer has ever made. When two countries are formed out of one, there are bound to be complications. But this wasn't just some paperwork being filled out. This was a complete disaster. The newly drawn borders sliced through villages, cities, farms, families, and hearts. It wasn't just buildings that had to be abandoned. People did too, 14 million of them. That's more than the entire population of the United States. And that's not counting the millions more who also had to relocate but didn't cross the border. That's why so many people had to leave their homes, not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. People started running for the hills, away from the violence and hatred that was erupting around them. Millions of refugees fled across the new borders, hoping to find safety with people who shared their religion. In some cases, people had to flee their own relatives who had decided to live in the other country. A child was separated from his mother, a wife from her husband, a brother from his sister, all because of where they happened to be born and what religion they followed. How could something like this happen? Well, for starters, India had been under British rule since 1858, which gave the subcontinent a lot of time to become very diverse. There were Muslims, Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, Jains, Christians, and others living side by side. Some had converted from one faith to another, while others had lived for generations in lands controlled by different empires at different times. But despite the differences, they had learned to coexist for centuries. Then the British came along. The British were less interested in keeping everyone happy than they were in extracting resources and making money. So they began sowing seeds of discord between the various groups, playing them against each other so they wouldn't unite and fight back. The British knew exactly what they were doing, and they succeeded all too well. The various groups began clashing with each other and hating each other. But the British kept manipulating them. If you want to be free from the English, they told the Hindus, then convert to Christianity. Or they would tell the Muslims, you can be free from the English if you agree to our plan to divide India. Unfortunately, some of these groups took the bait and agreed to end British rule if they were granted their own separate country. And that's how India became divided into India and Pakistan, two separate countries for two different religions. But even though people were leaving, the violence didn't stop. Many weren't able to leave their home peacefully. Instead, they were chased out by mobs, beaten, tortured, and murdered. Trains full of refugees sometimes arrived at their destination to find angry crowds blocking the tracks, preventing them from getting off. Those who did escape often found themselves homeless, hungry, and without any way to make money. Along the border, there were countless scenes of horror. There were mass rapes, entire villages being burned down, men, women, and children being hacked to death. It was a repeat of what had happened in Europe just a few decades earlier. After World War II, except this time, it was happening in Asia. We didn't know how many people were killed, because no one was keeping count during all the chaos. Historians estimate that between 200,000 and 2 million people died during the partition. And that's just the number of people who lost their lives. Behind every statistic, there is a human story. There were children being killed, mothers holding their dead babies, fathers carrying their wounded daughters on their backs. It was a nightmare that turned the subcontinent into one giant graveyard. And those who survived were forever traumatized by what they had seen. Now that we've told you the story, let us show you the map. This is a map of the largest migration in world history. The arrows indicate the movement of people from one place to another. And the size of the arrow shows the volume of people moving. This map is showing the movement of those who fled across the border. Let's zoom in and take a closer look. If we start in modern Pakistan, we can see an arrow pointing toward the border. These people fled to the northwest of British India, which is now Pakistan. Here's another arrow in the Punjab region. These people moved to what is now India. And here's another one, this time to the northeast, where they moved into what is now Bangladesh. Now let's go to India and see where people moved from. Here's an arrow in the Punjab. These people fled to Pakistan. Here's one in the northwest. They went to Afghanistan, and here's one in the northeast. They moved to Bangladesh. People also fled to Nepal, Bhutan, Tibet, and other parts of India, and even to Europe, North America, and Oceania. These arrows may seem like a small detail, but they're really important. They show how people were forced to flee their homes, not because they wanted to, but because they were being persecuted. For example, a Sikh might have lived in what is now Pakistan, but after seeing what was happening, decided to flee to India to seek refuge. Or a Muslim might have lived in the Punjab region of India, but after hearing about the atrocities being committed against Muslims, decided to flee to Pakistan. But as bad as it was, the map doesn't tell the whole story. You see, the main reason people were able to flee was because the British government helped them. Even though the British had caused this mess, they felt guilty about it. So they did try to help the refugees in several ways. They provided food, medicine, and temporary shelter. They organized transportation and made sure people were able to cross the border safely. They also tried to mediate between the various groups and put an end to the fighting. But it wasn't easy. There were so many people to help, and the British didn't have enough resources to go around. It was a massive logistical challenge. Also, the British weren't the only ones helping out. Relief camps were set up all over the place. People would donate whatever they could: food, clothes, blankets. They even held fundraisers and events to raise money for the refugees. It was a race against time to help as many people as possible before it was too late. It was tragic that so many innocent people had to suffer, but it was also remarkable to see how people came together to help. Despite the violence and hatred, there were still people who showed compassion and kindness. We can learn a lot from their example. Now it's time for you to make your voice heard. Which fact surprised you the most? Did you know that people were fleeing to places like Nepal, Bhutan, and Tibet? What do you think could have been done differently to prevent the violence? And what can we learn from this tragedy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed reliving these epic moments in History Revealed channel, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an exciting episode. Thank you for watching. Like, share, comment, subscribe. Till next video, enjoy your time. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring the past with History Revealed channel.